Welcome to the Fortified Life Podcast, where we learn how to develop a dependency on Jesus in the marketplace. From the boardroom to the bathroom, God is with you. Here's our host, author, speaker, teacher, encourager, stewardship coach, and my husband, the man they call Mr. Fortified, Jason Davis.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Jason Davis, a.k.a. Mr. Fortified. We are back for another episode of the Fortified Life Podcast, where we are passionate about developing a dependency on Jesus and the marketplace. Every single week, we have the opportunity to have on coaches, CEOs, authors, speakers, all types of people. And for this episode, I'm really excited because we have someone on from the healthcare, the medical field. And I'm always excited to hear insights from those who work in healthcare. Before I bring on our guest, let me introduce him to you. Dr. Mines is a sports medicine physician at Emory Healthcare in Atlanta, Georgia. His primary specialty is family medicine, but he has added qualifications in sports medicine. During his time at Emory, he has been a team doctor for the Atlanta Falcons, Atlanta Hawks, and Atlanta Dream. He is passionate about community outreach and is currently the Deputy Director of Community Outreach for a nonprofit organization that is involved with improving the relationship between peace officers and community members. In addition to this, he is a member of 100 Black Men of America, DeKalb County chapter. With this organization, he provides mentorship to middle school and high school students. He is originally from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, enjoys home brewing in his free time. He is married, has 2 4-year-old twin boys and a 2-year-old boy. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the Fortified Life Podcast, Dr. Mines.
Hello. Great to be here.
Yes, Dr. Mines, Dr. Brandon Mines. I know if those of you who may see this visually, Dr. Brandon Mines, but Dr. Mines, as he's probably goes by more often in the workplace. But it's good to see you, Dr. Mines.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Good to see you too.
When we take a look at your bio and accomplishments, Dr. Mines, we know God has graced you to do a lot of things, but kind of take us back and give us a timeline of how you got to where you are today.
Oh, wow. That's a big question, right? I guess I would take it back to my parents, right? My father is a family medicine physician. He's still practicing. He's about 77 right now, and he's been practicing for many years. And I got to see how he interacted with his patients, right? From just being good bedside manner, how to talk to people, how to treat people, right? And so I got to see that, and he never, pressured me to go into medicine. I think you just kind of learn from your parents like that. And on the other side, my mother, who lives in the Atlanta area now, but when I was growing up, she was a child psychologist, and she was that a lot of us have that mother that going to church, Sunday school, and from as long as you can remember. And so she's always made sure that as a family unit, that was an important part of life, right? And so I think going through the years, I got to see how I can be a scientist, a physician, right? But also, it's not anything separate from religion. People like to try to make these like, oh, if you're a scientist, you believe in God, or, if you're on the religious side, what about science? But it's all the same. And I intertwine those things because guess where science comes from God, right? So, I think over time that has been in my fiber as far as, what I find interest in and how I kind of foster the things I'm interested in. So, loving biology, went to Morehouse College, decided to go to medical school, decided to be a family physician so I can touch as many people as I could, with the skill set I felt I was gifted with, and then really honing it into sports medicine, where I could really focus on my patients who were really dedicated to just being healthy, exercising, really trying to attain their goals of I'm trying to do this thing and I need some help to get there, right? So that's what brought me all the way to doing sports medicine here in Atlanta. And then, we can talk about the other parts of the teams I work with, but that's how I got. I think that's a good way to a long answer to say what's my foundation in what I do, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Dr. Mines, you brought a couple of things to the attention as you were explaining. I always wondered this when it comes to professionals looking at the type of practice they want to have. And so you started to kind of get into this family medicine and then eventually sports medicine. What was kind of the deciding factor? Like, you know what, this is kind of the area that I want to focus on. You talked about having, being a scientist and experimenting, but what kind of caused you over the years to really narrow in that particular area?
It's interesting. I would say in general, family medicine is about as broad as you can get from a primary care specialty, right? And so I went into it because I liked that aspect of it. And what sports medicine did for me was it allowed me to find patients that were particularly motivated about something that was important to them. Like people come to the doctor for annual checkups, but most of the time, why are you going to the doctor, right? Like there's an ailment, or I have to kind of convince you to take this blood pressure medicine, or there's a lot of back and forth, and if you don't have that strong drive to make that a priority, then it can be a little bit more of I don't want to say challenge, but you're kind of going back and forth with people. When you're 19 and you sprain your ankle and you want to play in that sport, guess what? You're all ears on how do I get better? What's on task? What do I need to do to get where I want to be? But it's not even just the age, right? I mean, 12-year-old, 40-year-old, a master swimmer, someone who's running marathons when they're 60, hey, my knees hurt, I have some arthritis, how do I get better? So I like that I'm motivated mentality of the patient population, but I could still keep my diversity as far as the types of patients, right? I could touch. It's not just honed in on like one organ system or like one little, specialty. Like I just work on the right foot, it's like, nope, whole body, all ages. What's your sport? I do it all. So I think that's what kept me most interested.
Very cool. Dr. Mines, you talked about when you mentioned working with people that are motivated, the word goals immediately comes to mind. And what I love about your background is you get to partner together with people to get into that. And I think, Dr. Mines, sometimes people don't necessarily think about medical professionals from that perspective. So talk about how you partner with your patients to meet their goals, because some people probably did the little dog, the doctor goal. Like, so talk about that a little, that dynamic with a patient.
Yeah, that's a good point. What generally happens is, patients have their priorities set. Maybe they want to run a marathon and they start the program themselves, and they feel like they have it under control. But sometimes there'll be a little thing that'll be off, a little ache or pain. But they have this goal where they want to get to this marathon. So they come see me and we can talk about, oh, I have Achilles tendonitis, or, my foot hurts. And then I can partner with them by broadening their mind as far as the other things they need to be thinking about. Like, have you thought about how, your hip flexibility and how that affects your running gait? Have you thought about your nutrition? What are you eating? Your hydration, the mindset, bringing in sports psychologists. If you're trying to do an Ironman where you got to run 26 miles and cycle 100 miles, like that's mentally draining, right? So I try to partner with patients, and you really have to be as good as I can as reading an individual, like what do they really want, and then just frankly asking them, okay, what what can I do to help you get to your goal, your endpoint? And a lot of times they don't know that until I start bringing up what I just said, like, oh, you need to be working on hip strength, or you need to be a little more flexible in this part of your body. And so they work on that, and then they keep me in touch if something else happens, or you usually end up creating a relationship, right? So you'll see them again and they say, hey, I made it through the marathon and now I want to, climb mountains. And so you kind of go back to the drawing board with that. So
I love that partnership, Dr. Mines, because you're essentially looking at blind spots for them, and being that athletes are very motivated people, and I use that athlete term liberally, Dr. Mines, because listen, if you're trying to run, a marathon or something like that, you're an athlete in my book, not just if you play professionally. So right. I love that you're giving them an opportunity to, hey, maybe you should consider doing this, and then to have that feedback loop in the relationship, which builds trust. So folks, as you're listening, I hope you're realizing that doctors do a little bit more than you think.
Right.
So I love that partnership. And you mentioned this in talking about your background, Dr. Mines, because I think this is a perfect segue. Bedside manner. With you being so relational, I could easily see the type of bedside manner that you have with your patients. But where does this kind of stigma come from, Dr. Mines, in the medical field, where it's like, man, okay, they gave me the diagnosis, like I got the information, but it might have been a little bit colder of an interaction. Can you just kind of comment on that?
Yeah, no, it's a good point. There's a lot of thoughts on that. Part of it is a lot of the people who go into medicine have a strong interest in science and research, and you tend to be more left-brained and not as much a people person as much as you think being a physician would be a people person, because you're going into it for the science side of it, knowing you're going to interact with people. But I think it tends to sometimes select for, I don't know, maybe type A personalities. Maybe I'm really interested in the numbers, and a lot of people aren't grounded enough in knowing their place amongst people. You're not better than people because you went to medical school and you're a doctor. That's just what you do. So you can't have a arrogant air about you, like I'm just going to tell you what to do and that's it. That's a part of it, is the people it selects. You kind of run into that sometimes. The medicine is tough right now. There's a lot of pressures on doctors with time management and like reimbursement and like trying to, insurance companies, how many patients should you see, blah, 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 all that. So they tend to overstress themselves and overbook. And so now they're running from room to room, but that's really not how you communicate. So it takes a lot of skill to be able to see, have a healthy practice where you're busy enough, but you're not shirking people of the time that they need. And, that's what I think a lot of doctors don't really maybe care to try to hone, right? Like, how can I give time, but, not, I don't want to rush through this, but I have to tell them what I think. And it's not easy, but I think my personality being more laid back and like a calmer individual maybe comes a little easier for me.
Gotcha. So folks, there it is. There are doctors that do have bedside manner, but just know that they are under pressure too, as Dr. Mines is talking about, especially in 2024. And we all know what happened over the last 3 years. That added a little bit of pressure too, probably a little bit of burnout. And then also shout out to the nurse practitioners out there. There's a lot of, Dr. Mines, hey, give us all our shout outs.
Right.
Fully understand that as well. Dr. Mines, God has graced you to be able to work in multiple environments. And as far as sports medicine, you've been the team doctor for the Atlanta Falcons, the Atlanta Hawks, and the Atlanta Dream. How was that experience for you? And I want you to comment on something that you said, and folks, by the way, I met Dr. Mines at the holiday gala for GCBN. Shout out to Georgia Christian Business Network and Beth Copeland. But you alluded to that time with athletes that they're just people. So comment on what it's like to be team doctor for a professional sports organization, and then kind of give us a little bit of insight, because, you know, there's that shock and awe of, oh my gosh, it's Trae Young, or so talk about just being a team doctor in that environment.
Yeah, no, that's a good question, because when I first started doing it, I remember when I first started working with the Atlanta Falcons, it must have been 2011, and just being around these athletes I've seen on TV. I used to have season tickets. I would go, and you kind of get that initial like, oh, there's such and such and such and such, you know, like, and then as you're around these athletes, the bottom line is the vast majority, like 98%, they're very much like you and me, to the extent that approachable, you know, they have the same sense of humor, you know, social interaction, social comments and worries that we have. And so as you see them and you talk to them, as I would talk to them week to week, it was interesting to really see what was important to them. You know, it's an interesting parallel to, like you mentioned, Trae Young, like athletes on that level, same concerns as my high school athletes I take care of. You know, there's an injury, you know, what does this mean for the rest of the season? The difference is there's millions of dollars on the line, but they have the same concerns, and you meet their families, you meet their kids, I have conversations with them about, you know, what they're doing for Thanksgiving. Because I know it's kind of silly to say, but no, they're just like us. They just happen to play a sport, right? And so that's how it is. I think if I was in Hollywood working with Denzel Washington or Sam Jackson or something, it'd probably be the same thing, right? So it's been really interesting over the years to see some of the athletes on the big level, on the NFL side, some of the smaller professional teams I work with, same idea. You know, they have the same drive, the same family concerns, and frankly, the same concerns you and I have for what we see, whether it's like social injustices or, you know, what their doctor said back home and what does that mean? And their family member has a diagnosis they don't understand. So I kind of help them out in all those ways that I can.
Folks, athletes are just people too. Yeah, Dr. Mines, yes. So, Dr. Mines, what about the differences, and if there is any, in sport? Because, you know, Atlanta Falcons, that's the NFL, and then you have Atlanta Hawks, that's NBA, and then the Atlanta Dream. So were there differences sport to sport, or was it really just getting to know athletes in a different context?
Yeah, there's a difference in sport to sport. I think, I think that there wasn't a difference. There's not a difference in drive and desire, right? Like to be the best and to perform. I think when, for example, a WNBA, you know, less TV viewership, they make less dollar per dollar, you know, dollar for their time. So to compensate for that, they have to play overseas, and those women are playing 11 and a half months out of the year, you know, because of the money they need to make, for family they need to support. And, you know, I would say that that on the WNBA side, they're probably a little more, you know, down to earth with just what they're doing and what they're going on vacation with, or the cars they're purchasing, right? Because they're not making $10-20 million contracts. You know, on the NFL side, it's like the guys are like, oh, I got this Ferrari, I'm going to get this car. Like they're doing, you know, you hear the conversations and you're like, okay, well, you know, you're a high income athlete, but they have the same, like I say before, you know, the same concerns outside of that part. So but they're all equally nice. Not like I'm better than you because I'm a rich athlete. Like I was worried about that when I got started. I was like, I'm going to go to the Falcons. There's going to be a bunch of like divas, like whatever, you know, like these guys, but it's really not. It really wasn't like that. There's always one or two guys
Hmm.
right? But the majority, you're like, oh, okay, like we could hang out. Like you're pretty normal, except you go get in your Rolls Royce, I go get in my car.
Right.
Yeah.
No, that makes a lot of sense. The desire and the fire being there, athlete to athlete, that's an awesome thing to look at and to know. And that, yeah, you're right about the compensation part. I can certainly understand the difference in decision making criteria for sure. Dr. Mines, I know that faith informs everything that you do. So your interaction with the athletes, but you're also big in community outreach. And so talk a little bit about some of the work you do with the community, being a deputy director of community outreach for a nonprofit, and then also 100 Black Men of America, the DeKalb County chapter.
Yeah, no, it's important to me, and it's in the fiber of most family physicians. We're like boots on the ground type of doctors, and so for me, um, maintaining a touch point with the community is important. I will say for the nonprofit I work with is called Lewis. It's an acronym for the Law Enforcement Work Inquiry System. But the best way to describe it is as you were mentioning, I'm the deputy director of community outreach, and the whole mission of the nonprofit that I work with is to just improve those relationships that are in our communities, that relationship between community members and peace officers, because the community is going to be there. We're going to have peace officers there, but there's not a lot of conversation on, hey, how does mutual respect look on both sides? What everybody wants to go home safe at the end of an interaction. How do we get closer to that happening with less issues? And it's like most things in life, it comes down to communication, education. Let me learn something about you. You learn something about me. And that's what we do with Lewis is we bring together community members and law enforcement officers and peace officers right into these safe places, discussing interesting topics. Like we're going to talk about artwork, or we're going to, the officers are non-uniformed, and we may have high school or college kids, talking about the love of sneakers, and they didn't know, oh, I didn't know this officer likes sneakers like me. And they have these conversations that let you see like, oh, this person really, there's a commonality where we can kind of see each other, in a different light. And so I like that part of touching the community, because when we need it with gun violence and community violence and
Mm-hmm.
all kind of things going on. So that part is the nonprofit side. The other side with 100 Black Men of America, specifically the DeKalb County chapter here in Georgia, we have a leadership academy where we mentor middle school and high school kids, twice a month. They come to one of the local high schools, and we give them education and like, not like school. It's really more like a roundtable discussion about all the things, health and wellness, business, entrepreneurship, history that's relevant to them, things that they don't get all the time. Take them out on field trips, go to the government, the Capitol, like learn things, right? And I think the kids see that when they see you enough, and they can see like, oh, I can do that. I can be a state senator. I can be a doctor, a lawyer, different guys helping out. And so that's been really nice to see. And, we took some kids to London, with my nonprofit and 100 Black Men of DeKalb County, took kids to London to meet the Metropolitan Police, to discuss, policing in London and how it's different than the States, like really opening their minds in an international sense is useful and helpful too. So that's kind of how I would say, kind of my first, if I were going to explain, like, what am I doing in the community right now? That's what I like.
Wow. Dr. Mine's clearly making a huge impact in the community on Lewis, the nonprofit. Dr. Mines, you said something really powerful, that a lot of issues come from a lack of communication. When you're out at events and interacting and having these different forums, what's some of the conversation been on? Where do people believe some of those breakdowns are with communication?
Yeah, I mean, I think it comes from, okay, you can look at it from some of our youth, right? Say 12 and up, right? They
Mhm.
think that, oh, there's already a preconceived idea in their brain
Mm,
how they view the officer is going to interact with them, right?
okay.
Like if you see a pit bull with a chain, over at that house sitting there, like if I walk up by that pit bull, it might try to attack me. Well, we all know there's a lot of pit bulls are family dogs, right?
Yeah.
So you can't put everybody in the same box. And so the kids have that idea. And then, on the officer side, just like the kids feel misjudged, like they think I'm just a wild, like I don't have my head on straight, but I'm a straight A student. And just because I wear a hoodie, I'm not a criminal. Well, the officers are like, well, just because I'm an officer, I'm not looking to throw you in juvie or I'm trying to arrest you. I'm trying to hurt you. I'm trying to figure out what's going on,
Hmm.
right? In a situation when they show up to the scene. And so the officers feel prejudged a lot of times that, as soon as they show up on the scene, everybody kind of feels one way about them when they're just trying to sort out the situation. And so, but it comes down to communication. If you asked, okay, well, if the kid was asking the officer, what are you worried about when you show up? What's on your mind? And then that
Hmm.
officer may say something the kid didn't think about, like, oh, I'm afraid this other guy that you didn't even see might shoot me because I saw him last week do something. Like you don't know what they've
Mm,
seen. So, and that's where the communication piece comes in. Is like you got to try to put yourself in other person's shoes. I mean, that's human interactions, right? I mean,
yeah.
your spouse, your sibling, your your coworkers, right? You got to try to see it from their perspective.
Mm, that's huge, Dr. Mines. That putting yourself in the other person's shoes. How many issues could we solve if we just did more of that as a
Yeah,
society? My goodness. You're reading some people's mail there, Dr. Mines.
right.
On the 100 Black Men side of the house, Dr. Mines, we all say this, the next generation, that they're the future. When you're exposing them to opportunities like going to London, having conversations with police officers, what are they, what's the dialogue like? What are they telling you? What is the next generation interested in when you're sitting with those young men?
They first they want their voices to be heard.
Hmm.
They feel like no one really listens to them. They just get talked at. They they want to have, the adults and society have an open mind for the types of interests they have, where, schooling is looked at like, oh, when we were growing up, I'll put my age out there. I'll be 50 in a couple weeks, very shortly. And when I was growing up, it was standard. Like, yeah, you went to high schools, and if you go to college, and like that's what you did. But that's not really what everybody needs or wants. And a lot of the kids are saying, hey, I want to go to a trade school. I'm interested in, music. I'm interested in, and they want people to just respect, I think, their dreams and their goals.
Mm,
Um, but they're also very mindful of where society is economically, and it's very tough, right, to
yeah.
pay for things, housing, and all this. So they just want people to listen. And like if I would go to school, I don't want to have $500,000 in debt that
Yeah.
stays with me forever, and I can't get a job to pay. So they have a lot of stressors that way. But I think what they get from us at 100 Black Men is they see that they have mentors that have been as close as we could be to where they're going to be, because we haven't had the future yet, right? But we can say, look, I've been through situations. Let me walk you through how this can look. Let me show you can get there, and your pathway may be different than mine because it's 2024 and not 1994. But the pathway is there, and we can help you through the minefield a little bit, because there are good people out there, good entities. There are bad entities that aren't looking out for your best interest. And so, let's kind of work it out together.
Mm, so good, Dr. Mines. Dr. Mines, as we get ready to close, and we'll get to exciting things you're looking forward to here in the spring, but I'm sure you've had many. But when you think about some faith turning points you've had in your life, what's maybe one or two God moments where God really did a a great work in your heart and it just changed how you went about life?
Yeah. I think the first thing that comes to mind would probably be and a lot of people probably say this, but my children were born, right? So I have um, uh, my two oldest are twins, and I had them later than most people traditionally do. And so up until that point, I was very much focused on, my job and my career and like, you build your practice as a physician and then having, two sons, let alone just two new children made me kind of really think about now, okay, well, it's not about you and it's about what is their life going to be like? What type of legacy are you leaving for them? What type of society, what type of men do you want them to be? And so much of that is not about us, as you've said. Like it's not me. Like I'm not this. It's God working through me, right? It's not Brandon Mines doing all the work and staying up all the late hours. So I have to. I realize I have to, get that into them. I have to use, my connection with God in order to affect society in a way that I think would be beneficial, like what we're saying, like taking the time and energy to work with Lewis and 100 Black Men of America and like showing the kids this is how you should be because it's important. And so that's kind of the first thing that comes to mind is like, oh wow, different shift, different like changing gear, so to speak, as far as being more intentional about my mindset and how I move, and interacting with in different rooms and with different people and whatnot, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Well, Dr. Mines, we know that between you helping your patients and all the volunteer work you do, I'm sure you have a nice full docket at any given time. What are you excited about coming up here in the spring, April, May, or even into the early summertime?
Yeah, I say one of the things I'm excited about is with our nonprofit, Lewis, we are really gearing up to have some exciting community events where we're really pairing together some of the professional teams that I'm connected with, some current and former athletes, really helping out with some community events. And we're going to really be putting together a big event that's centered around sneaker obsession. I wasn't one of those kids. You may have been. For whatever reason, I never got into having the fresh new pair of Jordan, but it's a thing, obviously. And so I'm aware of that, and the kids are aware of that, and so we're really pulling together a great program with a brother from Brooklyn who does this, Sean Williams. He's a legend in sneaker design.
Mm-hmm.
He has a brick and mortar building in Brooklyn where he does this type of thing, teaching kids. So we're going to partner with him and athletes and have a really cool event this spring or summer here in Atlanta. So I'm looking forward to that. So it'll be on my social media page. I do a lot with LinkedIn. So people can follow me and kind of see what's going on.
Very cool, Dr. Mines. I was going to say, Dr. Mines, to prep you, you might want to, there's a favorite, there's always the debate. What's the best pair of Jordans? You may want to prepare yourself for that argument in anticipation of that event. I'll offer some free advice, Dr. Mines. A good, compelling argument are the Space Jam Jordans. So
okay.
I'll give that's a little nugget there. A lot of people, there's not a lot of argument about that particular pair, but just that'll give you a little leg up when the kids are.
I'll jot that down.
Absolutely. Well, Dr. Mines, you mentioned LinkedIn, and you've just shared so much wisdom and time with us today. What's the best way for people to keep up with everything God is doing?
I think, at this point, I would say LinkedIn, Brandon Mines. I mean, unless there's a whole bunch of other Brandon Mines joining us, you'll see me pop up instantly when you type my name in. I do answer a lot with email. I mean, I'm busy with everything I'm doing, and email is simple. You have brandonmines@gmail.com. I got in early on Gmail, so I didn't have to put a lot of dots and numbers in there. So
There you go, folks. You know how to reach the doctor. Now, be careful. He is a busy man. He'll get to you, but just know he's got a lot of kingdom impact. So please email him with a purpose and a great conversation. Don't bombard him saying, Dr. Mines, what about this medication? And don't do him like that. Don't do him like that.
I got family and friends for that. We're good.
Yes. Well, Dr. Mines, you have really blessed us here on the podcast. We just thank you for sharing your time and wisdom for us, all the impact you're making in the community, and then just with how you serve your patients, helping shine a light on that, hey, guys, there are doctors out there that are trying to have good bedside manner. And like Dr. Mines, he's relational. There are relational doctors out there, and he's one of them. So thank you for your time, Dr. Mines, and greatly appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate the privilege to be on the podcast. Thank you.
Absolutely. Folks, we leave things. We will have Dr. Mines' information. We'll have his email and his LinkedIn profile and the show notes. So go to jerichoforce.com and you'll be able to find out how to reach the doctor. But folks, how we always end things, don't compartmentalize your faith in the marketplace. And from the boardroom to the bathroom, God is with you. We'll see you next time on the Fortified Life Podcast.
Thank you for listening to the Fortified Life Podcast. You can catch us live on Wednesdays at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time and on demand. Check out fortifieddlifepodcast.com for more details. To learn how to live out your faith in the marketplace, grab a copy of Jason Davis's book, Fortified, Being Rooted in God's Plan for Work and Business, available on Amazon.